Hi guys, thanks for joining me. We're going to be making a bookmark in this video, and it's one that I've been trying to make for ages. The bookmark template has been out for a little while, but I haven't had a chance to sort of nail down a tutorial for it. The pictures on the listing show sort of a woodland scene bookmark, and I'm going to be recreating that one because it uses a few different colours, and we create that sort of horizon line between sky and a grassy area. The weights and measures, as always, are based on our wall. The main colours that I'm going to be using for this project are moss, cornflower blue, bright blue, emerald, and the deep purple. We will also be throwing in a few pinches of this and that for various sort of little accents. But tools that you're going to need, obviously your felting surface. For the templates, I do recommend a foam surface because it gives you a nice sort of flat area to work on. Your felting needles, a nice little sharp pair of scissors, and I do recommend the pocket scale. These can be picked up quite cheaply on eBay, and it helps you weigh out small increments so that you can have very consistent results with the templates. So let's get on and make ourselves a bookmark. To start with, I'm going to weigh out the wool that I need. To make a bookmark, the base layer, I find 2.5 grams, 2.5 grams of wool makes a good base, and then obviously you can decorate it however you want after that. Bear in mind, the more wool that you add, the thicker the bookmark may be. So, you need to play with it and decide on your vision of this project. Because we're going to be doing a sort of a sky and a grass area, then what I'm doing is dividing that 2.5 in half. So 1.25 grams of the sky colour, which is our cornflower blue, and 1.25 grams of the moss green, which is for the grass. This little tub that I use for my scale, which is very useful for sort of containing small amounts, is a trifle pot, and it breaks often. So I always have to have trifle, but it's a very useful little pot for sort of popping bits of wool in. Okay, what we're going to do first is just put down a base layer. Grab your green and pull it in half roughly. Spread out the fibres a little, and you want to spread them out so that they are just under midway. I like the horizon line not to be dead centre. I like it a little bit lower. Obviously, it's up to you. You could do sort of a sunset where you've got lots of sort of shaded colours down, but we're going to do this woodland one. Just start by pulling the fibres down into the corners and tacking those fibres in place. And again, just a little piercing of the surface, just so it holds those fibres as we're getting everything down. So that's all I'm doing right there, and this bit you want to leave fluffy. So I'm just going to flatten those fibres down ever so slightly more. Then we're going to grab about half of our cornflower blue, which is the sky colour, and we're going to do the opposite. We're going to start at the top and we're going to bring those fibres down, and we're going to allow this kind of overlap of sort of fluffy ends in the middle. So it's going to pop some right up into the top, making sure that I get those corners in. Bring it down, get right up into that top there. The weights and measures are a guide, so if you do need to use a little bit more or you use a little bit less, that's absolutely fine. They're just a good sort of baseline to start with, and then you play with it however you want. So I'm just bringing this down and overlapping those in the middle. I'm going to go up a size needle. I was using a 40 spiral. I'm just going to go up to a 38 spiral just to felt it down a little bit quicker. Then I'm just going to put an extra bit of blue, making sure I've got a good overlap, a good join between the blue and the green. And what will happen is we're driving the blue through the green, although it's lightly, we won't have a very harsh line on the front. It will diffuse it a little bit. So I would normally do this that way, but we'll see how we go. So lift it from the surface. In fact, I will turn everything. There we go. And as you can see on the front, we've got a nice diffused horizon line. So it's not a straight, stark line. Pop that back in. See if I can, because it's such a long template, it's a little difficult to film around the cameras and stuff. So we'll see if this way works a little better. Hopefully I haven't wandered off camera too much. So just getting that first layer down into the template. Now what we're going to do is take a pinch of this bright blue, and I know it looks shocking, but lay it into your sky area. Take your needle, and you do really want to drive this through. And then just lift, pop it all back in the template. Establish your edges again. And drive that blue through. And I know it looks like a great big sort of lumpy mess, but what's happening on this side is we're just getting some speckles of that bright blue just popping through, and it just helps break up the skyline. You can use any colours you like. I find you do want to use something that contrasts quite well, and by driving it through from the back you don't get a lump of colour as you see here, because we're putting the colour on this way and pushing the fibres through. It comes out more diffused on the other side. So that's all over, and now what we're going to do is just pop down our next layer, grab some more of your blue, and because we did green then blue from sort of the bottom, now we're going to do blue and then green. So grab the rest of your blue. So I'll just arrange my needles. So I'm going to go round the edges, right up into those corners. And then this will be the sort of the back of the bookmark. So that's the blue down. Now we're going to go in with the rest of the green. Just going to lift that. Establish those edges again. So I'm going to pull off a little bit of that green. Pop those in. Establish those corners. And then work up back into the template. Once you sort of get to this point, you could come in with a multi-tool. The pen type ones would do okay. The actual punch ones that have a cluster of 5 or more needles don't generally work very well on the foam. I think the impact cluster just tends to annihilate needles. So this is roughly where we're at. I'm going to go over it and just, my green is nice and solid, my blue's a little bit thin. So I'm going to pop that back in and just bring in another pinch. Into this area here. I hope my hands aren't getting in the way of this one too much. Trying to felt so that you can see. Normally I would hold it down and be felting, so fingers crossed this will all come out and you haven't just got pictures of my back of my hand. Okay, so what you'll do now is just keep going over your bookmark, and as you can see on this side we've just got this sort of speckled effect of the blue coming through. We've got a nice hazy horizon line. I tend to find that the surface that is towards the mat or towards the foam comes out a little bit smoother. The finish is a little nicer. So I always make that the front of the bookmark. So now all we're going to do is work over this. So I've still got a little bit of a thin spot there, so I'm just going to bring in a little bit more of my green. And when you're adding the fibres, you want these frizzy edges because they will blend out into your project. You won't create a solid line. Don't forget to keep lifting. Pop it back in. So I'm not going to bore you to death on camera with me just going over and over and over this, but keep lifting and keep felting. You can start turning it over now, start felting the other way, and you're going to work over it and over it until you've got until it's relatively firm. You don't want a solid shape because we still have I'm going to do the lavender one. I think it's one of my favorites, so you don't want to do too solid that you can't get a needle in it. So I'm going to leave it there on camera, and yet I'm not stopping. Right, there we go. So it's starting to hold its shape. Feel over it, make sure that it's sort of an even, that you've not got a solid one end and it's sort of flimsy at the other. You want it nice and even. Don't worry too much about really crisp edges right at the moment. If you want to, in the firming up process, you want to establish your edges, but you don't necessarily want them you know, they haven't got to be super neat and tidy at the moment, because we will be ironing and trimming, which, as some of you will know, does wonders for petals and things. So I'm going to carry on and firm this up a little bit more off camera, and then we're going to come back and we're going to add our flower detail. So I firmed everything up, and I added a little more wool across the back here. This area, the overlapped area, was a bit thin. So now the fun part. You don't have to keep this in the template to do this, but I'm going to grab some colours. This is the emerald green, which stands out quite nicely on the moss. The deep green's a little too dark for what I want. Obviously you have your vision. I'm going to do a single lavender, just because that's quicker, and a few leaves at the bottom. So what I want to do is establish my main sort of stem. To do that, start pulling off some fibres and just rolling them, sort of just stretching them out. Now the bottom of my lavender stem is going to be here. So I'm just going to get those fibres established there. And then to get a real nice straight line, you twist. Use my spiral. And twist. And then you can stab those fibres down in place, and you can see you get a real nice crisp line. So the top of my plant, my stem, and this is very slow, just work your way down your stem, and you want to push through and push out the other side. Carry on twisting. And then I'm going to have the top of my stem. I think it's going to stop about there. I'll do, because the actual kind of plant bit will go past that, or the flower heads. So there's my main stem. I'm just going to put in that in there. There we go. You can see that. And that rolling technique will really help you make a good sort of crisp line, and that will work on any project. So next thing I'm going to do is put in a couple of leaves down here, and it's a hint at a leaf rather than a real leaf shape. You could grab this. You could grab one of the templates and sort of use parts of it. It's entirely up to you. I'm going to freehand this so it doesn't require anything else. But I'm just going to, where my stem terminates at the bottom, and then just flatten out and put in a kind of a leafy shape. I have absolutely no idea actually what lavender leaves look like. Nothing like this, I would imagine, but that's okay. So I have a leafy shape going up that way, and then again I'm just going to pull off a bit, a pinch. Felt it into the base of my plant, and then just lots of little stabs. You want to be going through and coming out the other side, but you don't want to do really hard driving stabs, because that will attach your leaf, or sorry, it will attach your project to your surface, and then you'll end up having to tidy up at the back as well. So that's going to be my leafy shape right there. Obviously I'm going to do lavender. You can do any kind of flower you like, but if you can see, there we go. Okay, so to do the lavender head, I'm going to use a deep purple colour, which I think is lovely. When you're doing a picture, anything that's sort of 2D, you need to think about what's at the back and what's at the front. The plant is at the front, so if there's going to be anything in the sky or behind it, then you need to put that down first. And I want to show you how to do a little cloud. This is a bit of Arctic grey, and it's a really nice colour because it's got a few different sort of colours in there. It's a really nice blend, and it makes a great cloud. I'm going to pull off, it's so few hairs, it's really small. It's like that. Lay it down. I hope the camera's picking this up okay. Sort of lay it down. If you want a slightly more established cloud, put a bit more down. And just start by jumping about with the needle to get it tacked in. With anything like this, if you just focus on one point and stab lots there, all of the fibres kind of migrate to that point. So you want to start getting it established all over the place. so that your fibres don't necessarily pull. And this was how I did, if you have a look at one of the other pictures, I did a dandelion. So I used the same technique for creating the dandelion as I used for creating the lavender balls. And then once I did the lavender balls in a circle, I got the Arctic grey and just laid this down as I'm creating this cloud over the area, and it kind of sort of brought it all together. So there is my cloud. Which will be behind my flower. And if you're not happy with it, just, you know, scratch up the surface, move the cloud around. This is your little scene, so you could even put a little birdie in there somewhere. I don't have any black to hand, but again, like this, to put in a tiny little birdie, just a very, very thin wisp of wool, and just twist, and you can get that sort of flying bird shape. I digress. Lavender. To do the lavender balls, it really is less is more, and it's, for those who are a fan of Bob Ross, it's a few hairs and some air. This will make quite a big ball, so just roll it up in your fingers like that, and you see how big a ball that makes. I'm just going to pull a bit off, roll it again. You'll get a feel for it. That's a better size ball. Then you decide, I like to establish the top of my lavender flower first, so I'm just going to pop that in at the top there, and then the flower will come down just past the end of the stalk. Let's get that little bit that I just threw away. So just roll them up. And start spacing them out. You can put them down, use your needle just to scoop up those wild fibres. This one's a little bit of a labour of love with all the little balls, so perhaps wasn't the best choice for demonstrating. I always plan to do quick tutorials. They never work out being very quick. Yeah, I set myself a goal to actually do a tutorial. Oh, that one just went straight through and out the other side. Set myself a challenge to do a tutorial that is less than 5 minutes. There we go. Now I've said it. So, and you want different size balls from this. Don't put them too close together. You know, you want that sort of degree of separation. We're working in that sort of cone, classic cone shape for lavender, so pointy. You can always go back in with some smaller dots. And the size of dot that you put down isn't necessarily the size of dot you end up with, so bear that in mind. There we go, we're getting there. I might speed up some of this footage. Don't forget to keep lifting. Sure you get the idea. I always find that it's visually correct. I don't know what the term is, but just to have a little one of these sort of half overhanging that green stem, so that it doesn't look like everything's all around the side. We're trying to represent 3D, so carry on working with your little dots until you're happy with them. I'm not happy with this, so I'm going to probably make this a little bit taller. Yeah, that's a little bit better. So I'm going to put in some teeny tiny little dots now, just as an infill in a couple of places, just to fill it out, because they are quite dense, but you do want to be able to see some of that sky through it. There, that's starting to look a little bit better. Obviously you take as much time as you want to do your lavender. Oh, there goes another one. Come back. So I'm going to just stop there. We've got a pretty much sort of a lavender shape there. I'm going to show you a little bit of background detail. I'm grabbing a little bit of yellow, a little bit of white. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I am going to put in some tiny, tiny little dots. And I'm using my 40 spiral for this, which is a very thin needle. I'm just going to put some little yellow dots around on the floor, perhaps just to represent tiny little touches of something. And obviously the bookmark template lends itself to all manner of scenes, and you know, you can do Halloween is coming soon. You could do one with a bat on it, or you know, a witch's hat. There's lots and lots, so much potential, and these make great gifts as well. Dare I say it, soon to be coming out is going to be the Bookmarks cards and coasters set, and the coaster set will be much like this, only square. And you could also imagine, if you are also a card maker, you can make these bookmarks and have 3 of them on a panel, sort of 3 panels on an 8-inch card or something like that. Beautiful handmade card. You know, you could do a windowed panel. The coaster template also makes a very nice small card topper, and they make great gifts as well. you know, these will be useful. A little handmade gift for somebody. You can do them seasonal. Christmas always seems to be just around the corner. There we go. You can see I'm just adding in some spots. I'm going to add in some white, actual white rather than Arctic grey. And you know, you do whatever you want with this. The potential for so many different scenes. But I'm just going to stop there. Oops. Once you have, because I'm going to add some more dots and stuff off of camera, once you have got this to where you want, then we're going to iron it. So I'm going to finish off my little spots and things, grab the iron, and then we're going to iron this and trim it. I just realised that before I iron it, I've added a few more spots. I haven't really done much more to it, but I've popped it back in the template. And I'm just, because as you're working on it, it is going to spread out. So I'm just going to bring it back into the template right at the very end. And don't be tempted to just stuff it in and, you know, have at it, because you don't want to distort your work too much, but just bringing it back in, flattening it out. As you put it in, let's see, you can see so as I put it in here, this comes up, and that's actually not a bad thing, because you can use that extra little bit of bulk around the edges to really get a nice sort of crisp edge. Just going to turn it round a second. So get it all in. That's the nice thing about these templates. They, you know, you can always put your work back in them. You know, it can always, you know, reset what you're doing. If you feel like you're going off script a bit, you know, put it back in the template. So that, there, you can probably see it's a lot more square. Okay, so now we're going to iron. I have the iron on really hot and it's full steam. With the ironing, again, it's not we don't want a hard driving motion. It's more pressure and letting the steam do its work. So push and just give it a little wiggle. Turn it over. Now this is, compared to some of the petals, this is quite chunky to start with, so we're going to give it a good few goings over on both sides. You can already see just how thin and lovely and smooth that's becoming. Making sure everything gets a real good press. I think that'll do. Okay, so you can see now how beautifully thin it is. A lovely smooth surface on it. Okay, so we're going to grab those pointy, snippy little scissors that we've got, and we're just going to trim off the unruly bits. So I've got my scissors, and all we're going to do is just take off the excess fluffy. We're not cutting into the bookmark, just really neatening up that edge. And this is where a nice sharp pair of snipping scissors will really benefit. I do realise that my vocabulary and everything has gone out the window because I'm concentrating. There we go. I made it. Apparently I failed to multitask. There we go. So we've got a nice neat edge. You can make it even more square if you want. I like them not completely straight. It sort of adds a sort of more homemade feel to it, I think. But you could embroider, stitch on this as well. If you're making card toppers and things, you may want to add more wool to the base. This may be too thin. You might want to do something a bit more substantial, a bit thicker. You can use things like, for example, the daisy template, the small templates for adding, 3Ds. So you could have this lovely kind of panel across 3, and then have the flowers coming more 3D off of that as well. So there really is so much potential for this template to be used in so many different ways. A friend of mine, B, she made a dice using the bookmark template, and I must ask her about that because I'm sure that it will make an interesting tutorial as well. So there's the bookmark template. I hope that you enjoyed the tutorial. Thank you very much for spending your time with me. Do subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon which will notify you when I upload more videos, and I wish you all a very crafty day.